The elevator doors slid open on the 15th floor, and I stepped into the sleek lobby of Apex Agritech, my palms slick from the interview downstairs. The air hummed with a low buzz of fluorescent lights and distant keyboard clicks, but my nerves tightened like fence wire in a storm. That's when I saw her, my new manager, striding across the polished marble, her boots echoing with purpose. Tall, with sun-freckled arms from weekend rides, her sharp gaze cut through the chatter like a blade through dry grass. She extended a hand, firm and calloused. "Welcome aboard. Keep it professional," she said, voice low, setting the line right there. But something pulled at me, a spark in her unflinching stare that I couldn't shake. I needed this job. Bills stacking like hay bales, no room for distraction. Yet as she turned away, the weight of her presence lingered, heavy as morning dew. My first day blurred into the rhythm of the office, but it was her shadow that followed me everywhere. Assigned to her team right off, they gave me a desk in the open bullpen, close enough to her glass-walled office that I could see her through the partitions, hunched over spreadsheets, phone cradled against her shoulder. The space felt too exposed, like being out in the open pasture with no cover. I unpacked my laptop, stealing glances as she led the morning stand-up. Her hands gestured over printed reports, steady as she outlined quarterly yields for the regional farms we managed remotely. Voice even, no frills, cutting through the team's questions like she was herding strays. "Focus on the metrics," she'd say, and everyone nodded, myself included. But my eyes caught on the way her fingers tapped the edge of the table, rough from real work outside these walls. By noon, she called me in for my first task. Stood at my desk, arms crossed, explaining the client database update. Clear instructions, step by step, like breaking down a fence repair. Track supplier contracts for the northern orchards, flag any delays. Simple enough. But as she leaned in to point at my screen, her eyes lingered a beat too long. Dark and assessing, like she was reading more than the code. I nodded, throat dry, and mumbled thanks. She straightened, a faint nod, and walked back to her office. The glass wall caught the light, turning her silhouette into something solid, unyielding. The walkthrough came that afternoon, her leading me through the floor, past the break room with its humming fridge, the conference pod stacked with whiteboards. She pointed out the shared drives, the protocol for escalations. I trailed a step behind, notebook in hand, trying to focus on the words. But the air carried her scent, faint leather and earth from whatever ranch she escaped to on weekends. Then it happened in the supply closet, grabbing files from a high shelf. I reached, she did too, and her hand brushed my arm. Accidental, quick as a spark from flint. Skin warm, calloused palm grazing my elbow. I froze, heat rushing up my neck. She pulled back first, clearing her throat. "Careful there," she said, voice steady, but her eyes flicked away. We finished the tour in silence, the brush echoing in my head like a distant thunder roll. Evening settled heavy, the office emptying as clocks ticked past 5. Most of the team filed out, chatting about dinner plans, but I stayed, buried in the database. Lights dimmed in the outer rooms, casting long shadows across my desk. Her office door stayed cracked, a sliver of yellow light spilling out. I could hear her on a call, voice low, wrapping up with a supplier. The touch replayed, her hand on my arm, the unintended warmth. My fingers paused on the keys, skin tingling where she'd brushed. Why did it stick like burrs? I needed this steady, rent due, fresh start after the city grind. But the walls felt tighter now, the glass between us too thin. I glanced up, caught her silhouette moving, and forced my eyes down. The screen blurred. This pull, it was trouble, like chasing a shadow across open ground. You know that feeling, when something unspoken starts to weigh on you, heavy as unpacked crates. The next days folded into routine, but her orbit pulled tighter. Mornings, she'd nod as I clocked in, assigning tweaks to reports. I'd deliver them to her door, our hands brushing files. Always accidental, always electric. She'd review, mark changes with a red pen, her focus absolute. Once, during a team huddle, she praised my quick catch on a data glitch. "Good eye," she said, and the words landed solid, warming me more than they should. But boundaries held, her voice clipped in one-on-ones, eyes professional. Still, in the quiet hours, alone at my desk with the city lights flickering outside, I'd replay it all. The brush, the linger, the way her presence filled the space without trying. Nights, driving home to my cramped apartment, the tension coiled in my chest. I told myself it was nothing, just new job jitters. But deep down, it felt like the first crack in dry earth, waiting for rain. Weeks blurred into shared projects, the office rhythm pulling me deeper into her world. Deadlines stacked like cordwood, and soon enough, she paired me with her on an urgent one. Revising the annual yield projections for the western ranches before the board meeting. "We need this tight," she said that afternoon, dropping a stack of files on my desk, her shadow falling across the keyboard. No choice but to stay late, the team thinning out as the sun dipped behind the high rises. By 7, the floor was mostly empty, just the hum of the HVAC and our keyboards clacking in tandem. Her office door stayed open, light spilling into the bullpen where I worked, close enough to hear her chair creak when she shifted. We fell into a pattern, trading drafts back and forth. She'd call me in, point out gaps in the data, irrigation shortfalls on the dryland farms, projected dips in hay output. Her voice stayed steady, but the hours wore on her. Around 10, as the city lights flickered on outside, she leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. "This job," she said, almost to herself. "It wasn't always suits and screens." I paused, files in hand, waiting. She glanced up, tired eyes softening just a fraction. Started out mending fences on my family's spread, up in Montana. Climbed ranks the hard way, nights like this, but with mud on my boots and wind in my face. Vulnerability cracked through, raw as exposed soil after a freeze. Her gaze held mine a second longer than needed, then dropped back to the report. I nodded, throat tight, and murmured something about knowing that grind. But inside, it shifted something. The manager, unflinching, had layers like stratified earth. The coffee machine in the break room groaned empty by 11. So I offered to fetch more from the lobby cart. "Black, no sugar," she said, not looking up. The elevator ride down cleared my head, cool air brushing my skin, but her words echoed. Back up, steaming cups in hand, I pushed through the doors to find her at the window, staring out at the sprawl of lights. Back turned, shoulders taut under her blouse, lost in whatever pulled her there. The city looked small from up high, ranches we'd mapped reduced to pinpoints. I set her cup down softly, the steam curling like morning fog. She turned, startled, then eased into a half-smile. "Thanks. Gets heavy sometimes, staring at numbers that mean real lives out there, ranch hands waiting on our calls." Her fingers wrapped around the mug, knuckles whitening briefly. We sat then, side by side at her desk, screens glowing in the dim light. Proximity hit hard, her arm inches from mine, the faint scent of her soap cutting through the stale office air. That's when the questions turned. Not about the projections, but softer probes. No pressure, just curiosity slipping in like dawn light. "What brought you here?" she asked, sipping slow, eyes on her cup. I told her about the city burnout, the pull toward something grounded, even if it was desk-bound now. She nodded, shared a bit more. How the corporate climb felt like trading saddle for spreadsheets, but the ranches kept her tethered. "Miss the dirt sometimes," she said, voice low, gaze flicking to me. My heart thudded, too loud in the quiet, her profile sharp against the window. Jaw set, a stray hair falling loose. I forced my eyes to the screen, pretending to scan a column, but the pull was magnetic, like gravity after a long ride. Every shift of her chair, every tap of her pen, amplified it. We worked on, words weaving personal threads into the professional weave, silences thick with what wasn't said. By midnight, the projections locked in. We packed up. Her hand brushed mine, passing a file. Deliberate? No, just the late-hour fog. But my pulse raced, skin remembering. Driving home, the streets empty, her questions lingered, probing deeper than boundaries should allow. The tension built in those silences, unspoken as thunderheads gathering. A team outing the next weekend exposed cracks in her professional facade, the mask slipping just enough to show the woman beneath. The team outing hit that Friday, a forced mixer at some downtown lounge with exposed brick and overpriced wine flights. HR's idea to build camaraderie, but it felt like herding cats in a pen too small. I showed up late, tie loose, slipping through the crowd of suits and chatter. She was already there, corner booth, nursing a glass of red, her posture straight as a fence post amid the swirl. Our eyes met across the room, quick, then away. I grabbed a drink, something sharp to steady the nerves, and wove toward the group. Small talk landed on me first, colleagues ribbing about the projections we've nailed. Saved our hides, one said, clapping my shoulder. I laughed it off, but she chimed in from the edge, voice cutting clean. Team effort. Simple, but it pulled me her way, the conversation circling back like a well-worn trail. We ended up side by side at the bar, ordering refills. The noise pressed in, laughter spiking over a bad joke, glasses clinking like loose harnesses. How's the city treating you? She asked, stirring her wine, eyes on the stem, forced but genuine enough. I shrugged, mentioned the traffic jams that choked like overgrown brush. She nodded, shared a line about missing open roads, the kind that stretched without end. Her words were measured, but then someone dragged a story about a botched client call and she cracked, a rare laugh bubbling up, low and real, over the rim of her glass. It hit like sunlight breaking clouds, warming the air between us. Her hand rested on the bar, fingers loose, and I caught the faint scar across her knuckle, badge from some ranch mishap. The sound lingered in my chest, pulling tighter than the crowd. I watched her after that, navigating the colleagues like she was skirting a rocky ridge. Poise held her up, nodding at the exec's boasts, deflecting praise with a tilt of her head. But isolation shadowed it, quiet as dust settling. She stood apart even in the press, answering questions with half smiles, gaze drifting to the window where city lights smeared the night. One guy from sales cornered her about expansion plans, voice loud, and she handled it smooth, but her shoulders tensed, the mask thinning. I hung back, sipping slow, the wine turning bitter on my tongue. She caught my stare once, held it a beat. Questioning? Then turned away. The room felt smaller, her presence a steady pull amid the noise, like gravity after a long day's labor. Music kicked in then, some upbeat track thumping through hidden speakers, and the group shifted. Dance floor's open, someone yelled, pulling folks up. I resisted, but hands tugged me in. Team spirit, they called it. She joined too, reluctant, glass set aside. The crowd surged, bodies bumping in the dim light, sweat and cologne thick as summer heat. Then it happened. Accidental press amid the sway, her body close to mine. Hip to hip, the heat of her through thin fabric, arm brushing as we turned. Noise swallowed everything, but her scent cut through. Clean soap laced with that earth undertone, steadying. My hand steadied on her waist for a split second, the curve firm under my palm, and time stretched, the beat pounding in my ears. Her breath hitched, eyes locking on mine, dark and searching in the strobe. I pulled back too quick, heat flooding my face, mumbling excuse about the bar. She let go, brow furrowing in that unspoken question, why the retreat? The furrow deepened, a crease like cracked soil after drought, and she turned into the crowd, laugh gone. The almost moment hung, electric as a storm's edge, leaving me adrift. I slipped out early, the cool night air slapping scents back, but the drive home replayed it all. The proximity, the warmth, her furrowed gaze pulling at threads I couldn't name. Desire sharpened, keen as a fresh blade, cutting through the professional haze. Windows down, city blurring past, I gripped the wheel tighter. What was I doing, letting this root so deep? Back at work Monday, assignments intensified, forcing more one-on-one time. the tension coiling like wire under strain. Monday hit like a dust devil, assignments piling high after the mixer haze. She dropped the high-stakes presentation on my desk by 9, board review for the Eastern expansion, mapping new ranch acquisitions into our grid. "We pitch tomorrow," she said, files thudding down, her eyes scanning mine quick before dropping away. No mention of the weekend sway, the brush that still burned in my memory. But the one-on-one time ramped up, pulling us into the conference room by noon, whiteboards filling with charts and projections. The room felt smaller than usual, walls pressing in like corral boards after rain, her presence filling every corner. We started smooth, mapping irrigation needs for the new spreads. Drip lines versus pivots, yield forecasts tied to soil tests she'd pulled from the field reports. Her marker scratched steady across the board, voice outlining the strategy. Conservative buys first, low-risk holdings to buffer market dips. I nodded, adding notes on supplier ties, but tension simmered under the words. As hours ticked, disagreements surfaced, sharp at first, then escalating. I pushed for bolder moves, leveraging the organic certs to snag premium contracts, arguing the ranches could handle it. "It's not just numbers," I said, heat rising. "Those fields need vision, not caution tape." She turned, arms crossing, jaw tight. "Vision without ground? That's how you lose the herd." Her words cut, edged with the weight of calls she'd fielded from failing ops. The arguments built like thunder rolling in, voices rising in the sealed room. She paced, boots scuffing the carpet, pointing at the grid. "We can't overextend. Last quarter's drought wiped 3 accounts." I countered, leaning into the table, the wood cool under my palms. "But holding back starves growth. We've got the data." Back and forth, the air thickening, her frustration peaking as shadows lengthened outside. She stopped at the desk, hands clenched on the edge, knuckles pale against the dark wood. Voice dropped low, edged like barbed wire. "This isn't a game. Real people count on us. Hands breaking their backs while we play safe." The words hung, her chest rising quick, eyes flashing dark. I met her stare, pulse hammering, the space between us crackling. It wasn't just strategy, it was us. Boundaries fraying under the strain. Sun dipped low, conference room dimming to the glow of the projector. We circled the board, words slowing. Compromise emerging from the heat. Hybrid approach. Phased buys with buffers. She erased a line, redrew it cleaner, our shoulders nearly touching as we leaned in. The air stayed thick, unresolved, heavy with sweat and the faint tang of dry erase fumes. Resolution landed quiet, files stacked, but the tension lingered, coiling tighter. She sank into a chair, rubbing her neck, the fight draining from her frame. "Sorry," she murmured, voice soft now, eyes lifting to meet mine fully. No glass walls, no averted glances, just raw connection. The barrier cracked, her gaze holding steady, pulling me in like open sky after storm. I sat across, nodding, the apology settling warm in my chest. "Me too. We got it right." We lingered after, packing slow, the room emptying its echo. Her scent clung, clean soap mixed with paper dust, grounding as fresh-turned earth. It wrapped around me as I trailed her to the door, the hallway lights harsh after the dim. "Good work," she said over her shoulder. But her eyes flicked back, softer. Driving home that night, windows cracked to the cooling air, her words replayed, the clenched hands, the full stare etching deeper. The compromise felt earned, but the heat unresolved, stirring something beyond the boardroom. Desire edged sharper, professional lines blurring like horizon in heat haze. I gripped the wheel, city fading to quiet streets, her presence a shadow I couldn't shake. A personal crisis pulled me closer the next week, peeling back her layers in ways the office never could. The next week dragged heavy, like mud after a downpour, until her crisis cracked through the routine. It started mid-morning, the office humming with calls and printers. I passed her door, ajar as always, and her voice filtered out. Low, strained. Not the steady clip of client talks. She paced behind the glass, phone pressed tight to her ear, free hand gripping the desk edge. Mom, I know the ranch needs hands, but I can't just drop everything. Pause, then sharper. It's not running away. It's building something here. Her words broke on the last, voice cracking slight, like dry timber underweight. Family pressure, clear as boot prints in soft earth. Expectations pulling her back to whatever spread she'd left behind. I slowed, pretending to check an email on my phone, but the raw edge in her tone hooked me. She hung up abrupt, sinking into her chair, head in hands. The vulnerability hit hard, peeling her armor just enough to show the strain beneath. Break time rolled around noon, the team scattering to cubicles or the street carts. I lingered by the coffee station, mug steaming, and saw her emerge. Shoulders slumped, eyes distant. No one else noticed, heads down in screens, but I stepped closer, casual as checking the pot. Rough call, I said, voice low, pouring an extra cup. She startled, gaze snapping up, surprise flickering before walls rebuilt. But she took the mug, fingers brushing mine brief, warm. Family stuff, she muttered, sipping black, steam curling between us. I nodded, leaning on the counter, the formica cool under my palms. Sounds heavy. If you need to vent, I'm here. No push, just quiet offer, like holding a gate open in wind. Her eyes met mine, guarded thanks, softening the edges. Appreciate it. Not used to unloading at work. She straightened then, but the crack lingered, a hairline fracture in her poise. We stood there, the break room empty, air thick with unspoken weight. Her thanks hung simple, but it shifted us. Me seeing the woman hauling invisible loads, her acknowledging the hand extended. Lunch found us in the break room again, the space deserted as rain pattered the windows. She'd skipped the team chatter, tray in hand, sandwich unwrapped, eyes on her phone. I joined her at the table, no invitation needed after the morning. Mind company? She shook her head, gesturing the seat. We ate slow, forks scraping plastic, the downpour muffling the outer buzz. Conversation started light, yield reports, a glitch in the irrigation sim, but turned deeper, stories slipping out like water through cracks. She spoke first, voice measured. Grew up on that ranch, mending fences before school. Dad expected me to take it over, but the city pulled. Pause, her knife slicing tomato precise. Left a sister holding it alone now. They don't get the suits, the spreadsheets. I shared back, my own uproot. City grind chasing stability, heartbreaks that chased me out. Last one chipped away slow, made me doubt every step. Her nod came quiet, eyes understanding. Mine too. Thought love meant staying put, but it trapped more than tethered. Past wounds aired, raw as salted earth, exchanged over cooling coffee. No details spilled wild, just enough to mirror the aches. Betrayals that left scars like barbed wire nicks. Then her hand moved, covering mine on the table. Brief, electric, palm warm against my knuckles. Time paused, the touch sparking like struck flint, heat racing up my arm. Her eyes held, dark and searching, the air between us humming. A beat, two. Then she withdrew, slow, fingers trailing slight. Sorry, she whispered. But no real apology in it, just the weight of what almost was. I nodded, throat tight, the table suddenly too small. Lunch wrapped awkward, trays cleared. But the pause echoed, boundaries blurring like rain-streaked glass. Nights after haunted me, what-ifs circling like coyotes under moon. Driving home through slick streets, her hand's warmth replayed. The crack in her voice, the stories shared. Sleep came fitful, dreams of open fields where lines dissolved, her gaze pulling me under. The professional edge frayed, temptation rooting deep as drought grass. I woke tangled in sheets, resolve thinning. This pull, it blurred everything. Job security against the ache of unspoken want. Office rumor mill stirred soon after, whispers heightening the hidden stakes, eyes turning our way. The office rumor mill churned slow at first, like gravel under tires on a back road. But it picked up after that lunch. Colleagues started noticing the glances, mine slipping toward her door, hers catching mine across the bullpen a second too long. It wasn't overt, just the way eyes linger in quiet moments, but eyes have a way of talking without words. By Wednesday, subtle gossip filtered through. Not in loud whispers, but tucked into emails, chain messages disguised as updates. "Hey, saw you two deep in it again. Spill?" One from marketing pinged, emoji winking like a coy glance. Another from the admin pool. "Manager's got a soft spot? Keep us posted." I deleted them quick, heat rising in my chest, but the words stuck, burrowing like thistle seeds. The air shifted, charged with knowing looks during stand-ups, smiles that curved just a hair too sharp. No one said it outright. Professional decorum held like fence wire. But the undercurrent pulled, making every step across the floor feel watched. Her team, mostly, but it spread, turning the open space into a pen too tight for secrets. She felt it too, I could tell. Meetings after that, she pulled back, deliberate, the distance a cold wind off the plains. Thursday's strategy huddle, she sat at the head of the table, voice clipped as she ran through ranch audits, soil pH dips in the valley spreads, feed cost spikes. But when our eyes met over the handouts, she looked away first, focusing on the next slide, her pen tapping steady against the wood. It hurt, that pullback, painful as a fresh blister from ill-fitting gloves. No more lingering instructions at my desk. She emailed them now. Attachments crisp, tone neutral as packed earth. "Review and revert by EOD," the subject lines read. No warmth in the words. I nodded in team calls, contributing data points on crop rotations, but her gaze skipped me, landing on others like I was just another chair in the room. The avoidance amplified everything. The empty space where her voice used to probe, the way her chair angled away during breaks. It carved an ache deep, isolation wrapping around me like fog rolling off a creek at dawn. I'd catch myself staring at the glass wall, her silhouette blurred by frosted panels, and force my head down, fingers tightening on the mouse. Friday brought the solo task, a gut punch disguised as routine. She called me into her office mid-morning, door half open, the scent of fresh coffee hanging heavy. "Need you on the solo audit for the Southern Co-op," she said, not looking up from her screen, handing over a thick folder without touch. "Full dive, contracts, yields, compliance. No team input this time." Her voice stayed even, but the assignment landed heavy. Isolation cranked up, like leaving a hand alone in the back 40. I took the files, nodding, the paper cool against my palms. "Got it. Timeline?" She glanced then, brief, eyes shadowed. 2 weeks. Keep me posted via updates." No offer to brainstorm, no walkthrough like before. I retreated to my desk, the bullpen buzzing around me, but it felt hollow, the chatter distant as wind through wire. Spreading the folder open, I dove in, line by line on irrigation logs, cross-checking against weather polls, but every keystroke echoed the ache. Her avoidance gnawed, amplifying the quiet hours, the way she'd pass my station without a word, boots soft on carpet. Nights blurred after, home to silent walls, the task piling like unsorted hay, her distance a weight pressing down. But I caught her watching once, late afternoon light slanting through the blinds. I'd stepped out for water, glass in hand, and there she was, from the office doorway, arms crossed, eyes on me, conflicted. Not the steady gaze of before, but tangled, like storm clouds chasing clear sky. Brow furrowed slight, lips pressed, holding something back. Our stares locked a beat, raw, unspoken. Then she turned, door clicking shut soft. The moment burned, her conflict mirroring mine, pulling at the threads we'd both frayed. Water forgotten, I stood there, pulse thudding heavy. Internal resolve hardened then, solid as sun-baked clay. Confront this, lay it bare, or let it fade into the dust of routine. The choice weighed, heavy as a saddle after long ride, but the ache demanded motion. You know that edge, when silence screams louder than words, forcing the hand? Crisis forced confrontation soon after, raw and unfiltered, breaking the careful distance we'd built. The crisis hit like a flash flood through dry arroyos, swift and unforgiving. It was the Southern Co-op audit I'd been buried in alone, the one she'd assigned to widen the gap between us. By Thursday, red flags piled high. Compliance lapses in water rights, yields tanking from unreported blight, contracts fraying like old rope under strain. The board email landed at 4, urgent. Fix or face audit shutdown, millions in partnerships teetering. She called me in sharp, door shutting firm behind us, her office air thick with printer ink and tension. We pull this tonight, she said, voice low, pulling chairs to her desk. No more distance, crisis demanding hands together, screens side by side. The bullpen emptied as evening fell, city lights pricking the windows like distant campfires. But we stayed, coffee going cold, files spreading across the wood like spilled feed. Hours ground on, the fix session stretching taut. I traced the blight logs, cross-referencing satellite poles she'd printed, dark patches on the fields, irrigation maps skewed. Her fingers flew over her keyboard, pulling supplier backups, voice dictating revisions clipped and quick. But cracks showed fast, blame circling like buzzards. You missed the water filings, she said. Not accusing at first, just fact. But heat built. I pushed back, leaning in, the desk edge digging my ribs. Data was buried, your team's oversight on the uploads. Words sharpened, voices rising in the sealed space, echoing off the glass walls. She stood, pacing the narrow room, boots thudding soft on carpet, hands raking through her hair. Can't pin this on ghosts. Real ranches hang on these numbers. Families scraping by while we scramble. Her frustration boiled over, edged low, chest heaving, eyes flashing dark as storm clouds rolling low. I matched her, rising too, the air crackling heavy, proximity forcing breaths to mingle. It wasn't just the audit, it was us, the weeks of pullback, the unspoken ache fueling the fire. Ray's voices peaked, then broke, her slamming a file down, the thud vibrating through the desk, silence crashing in after like dust settling on parched ground. The quiet hung heavy, thicker than the midnight air outside, our breaths ragged in the dim lamp glow. She sank back into her chair, elbows on knees, head bowed, the fight draining from her frame like water from cracked earth. I stayed standing, pulse thudding in my ears, the room too small for the weight between us. Her hands trembled slight on the desk edge, knuckles pale, and she lifted her gaze, raw, unguarded, pulling me in. You keep looking away, she whispered, voice breaking the dam, soft as wind through cottonwood leaves, but cutting deep. Why? The question landed solid, cracking the silence wide. Her eyes searching mine, conflicted no more, just open ache. Time stretched, the words echoing the furrow I'd seen in her brow weeks back, the avoidance we'd both built like barbed wire fences. Admission spilled then, words tumbling unbidden, hidden attraction pouring out behind the averted eyes. Because I can't stop seeing you, I said, voice thick, sinking to the chair across, the confession raw as stripped bark. Every glance, every brush, it's too much. The job, the lines, but you pull like gravity after a long ride. I've been looking away to keep it buried, but it roots deeper every day. Heat flushed my face, heart hammering exposed, the professional shell shattering in the quiet. Her breath caught, eyes widening slight, but no retreat, just a nod, slow, mirroring the storm in my chest. Me too, she murmured, hands trembling now in full, reaching across the desk to clasp mine, fingers warm and unsteady. Fought it hard, the power, the risk, but your presence sticks, like dirt under nails after good work. Attraction's been there, hidden, making every silence ache. Her grip tightened, electric, the mirror of feeling sealing us, vulnerability bridging the gap we'd carved. We sat like that, hands linked, the audit forgotten in the flood of truth. Her thumb tracing my knuckles slow, grounding as fence post in wind. The night wrapped after, fixes patched hasty, but the break reshaped everything. Morning light would filter different, daily rhythm altered, hope flickering amid caution, steps tentative as first rain on cracked soil. Aftermath hit Monday like dawn breaking slow over the ridge. Everything shifted, but nothing overt. The office hummed, same as always, keyboards tapping, phones buzzing low. But between us, subtle changes rooted deep. Meetings stretched longer now, not by agenda, but by the way we'd linger after. Chairs angled close as we reviewed ranch logs. She'd point to a yield spike on the screen, her arm brushing mine, intentional this time. Fingers grazing the mouse pad deliberate, sending warmth up my skin like sun hitting chilled earth. No words needed. The touch said enough. A quiet claim in the professional weave. I'd nod, heart steadying into the rhythm. Her proximity no longer storm, but steady wind. Navigating boundaries took work, like mending fence after a cow's breach. Careful posts, wire pulled taut. She kept guidance laced with new warmth, voice softening in one-on-ones, eyes holding mine without the old clip. Try this angle on the irrigation, she'd say, leaning in, her breath faint against my shoulder, the scent of clean soap and faint earth pulling me under. But she'd pull back then, glancing at the door, reminding us both of the lines. HR policies hung unspoken, power tilt making every step measured. I felt it too. The risk of whispers turning loud, jobs teetering like loose rock on a slope. Yet her warmth seeped through, thawing the caution, turning instructions into shared ground. Once, during a client debrief, she passed me a note under the table. Simple. Good call. Her handwriting rough, like scratched in dirt, but it landed solid, building trust quiet as roots under soil. Shared secret smiles became our language, flashing across the conference table during team huddles. She'd catch my eye mid-presentation, lips curving slight, a flicker of knowing that warmed the room's chill. No one noticed, heads down on slides of feed costs and pasture rotations, but it built something. Quiet trust, layering like dust on a windowsill, settling steady. I'd smile back, small, the curve easing the knot in my chest, her gaze anchoring me amid the chatter. It was in those moments her reserve cracked wider, the manager fading to the woman who'd whispered in the dim, hands trembling with admission. Fear lingered still, a shadow at the edge, colleagues' eyes, the what-ifs of exposure. But the pull strengthened, magnetic as gravity after long separation. We'd exchange files, fingers lingering a beat, the contact electric yet contained. Steps toward possibility feeling earned, not rushed. Evening came that Thursday, hours after the team cleared out, the bullpen emptying to echoes. Walk? She asked at my desk, voice low, coat draped over her arm. No pressure, just the offer hanging simple. I nodded, grabbing my jacket, the air between us thick but welcome. We slipped out a side door, city streets cooling under sodium lights, the sprawl feeling less confining with her stride matching mine. No rush in the pace, boots, hers scuffed from real ground, clipping sidewalks steady. Words turned then, not to work, but dreams unspoken, skirting the edges of what we carried. Ever think about getting back to the dirt full-time? I asked, glancing her way, the breeze tugging her hair. She paused at a crosswalk, eyes on the horizon where buildings met sky. Sometimes, miss the feel of it under nails, the way a field responds slow, honest. Her voice dropped, vulnerability threading through. But here, with you, it's building something too. Steady, like planting rows that last. I shared back, the city lights blurring as we turned a corner, past food trucks shuttering down. Dreamed of a place once, small spread, hands in soil, no screens between. Fear nipped at the words. What if it pulled her away? Or us? But she squeezed my hand brief, hidden in pocket shadows, the warmth chasing it off. We could find that balance, she murmured, unspoken promise hanging like mist off a creek. The walk looped back slow, words weaving hopes without naming them. The pull rooting deeper, fear fading to background hum. Steps felt lighter, possibility opening like gate after lock. Her presence a tether in the urban drift. Resolution cemented it all that night. Shift earned through the careful dance, openness blooming quiet as first green after rain. Friday lingered heavy, the office thinning as weekend pulled folks out. I'd spent the morning buried in final co-op updates, her emails crisp but laced with that new undercurrent. Questions about my weekend plans tucked in sign-offs. By 3, resolve hardened, solid as sun-baked clay. I knocked on her door, heart thudding steady, the glass cool under my knuckles. She looked up from her screen, brow lifting slight, the room smelling of fresh coffee and stacked reports. Coffee? I said, voice even, bold invitation hanging simple. Outside these walls, no spreadsheets, just us. Her eyes held mine, searching a beat. Hesitant, true, the manager weighing risk against want. Fingers paused on her keyboard, then she nodded, slow. Yeah, let's. The yes landed warm, cracking the last fence between professional and real. We slipped out at 4, the elevator ride quiet but charged, her shoulder inches from mine, the descent mirroring the drop in my chest. City streets buzzed mild, Friday energy loosening collars, but we veered toward the park 2 blocks over, green space carved from concrete, paths winding under old oaks. Coffee cart steamed at the edge, black for her, cream for me, cups warm in our hands as we walked. No rush in the stride. Boots, hers still carrying that faint dust from imagined fields, clipping gravel steady. Conversation flowed free then, unknotted by office hum, words spilling easy as creek water after thaw. Ever wonder what we'd build without the suits? I asked, sipping slow, the park light filtering gold through leaves. She glanced sideways, cup to her lips, a half smile tugging. A spread, maybe. Small, hands in dirt, watching things grow without quarterly reports. Her voice softened, vulnerability threading through like roots seeking water. We sat on a bench after, steam curling between us, the city noise fading to bird calls and distant traffic. Past wounds aired natural in that light. No force, just truth surfacing like stones in turned soil. She spoke first, gaze on the path where joggers passed. Left the ranch young, chasing bigger skies, but the woman I loved then, she wanted the wild, not the steady. Pulled me into storms I couldn't weather, left me questioning if roots were just chains. Her fingers tightened on the cup, knuckles paling brief, the scar across her hand catching sun. I nodded, sharing back, the words coming unbidden. Mine chipped slow, made me hide behind work, afraid connection meant losing ground again. Park light warmed her face, softening lines, her eyes meeting mine full. No barriers, just understanding mirroring the ache. We both carried that weight, she murmured, setting her cup down, the bench creaking under the shift. But here, it feels lighter, like soil ready for planting. Laughter slipped in then, dry and real, over a shared story of city mishaps. My failed attempt at a balcony garden, her weekend rides turning muddy disasters. The flow eased old scars, airing them without sting, the park wrapping us in green quiet. We rose as sun dipped lower, paths leading back toward the office towers, but the world felt less confined now. Streets opening like gates swung wide. Her hand brushed mine accidental at first, then intentional. Fingers linking slow, palm warm and calloused against my skin. Hand in hand we walked, the contact grounding as fence wire pulled taut, her thumb tracing my knuckle absent, electric yet soft. No words needed. The hold said enough. Possibility blooming in the grip. City blurred past, vendors calling, lights flickering on early, but it shrank, our steps sinking like well-matched strides across open ground. This, she said low, squeezing once, feels right. No rush. I squeezed back, heart steadying into the rhythm, the touch chasing shadows away. Promise of more hung unspoken, but clear, slow, honest exploration ahead. No leaps, just measured steps like tending young shoots. Dinner next week, I ventured, voice light, the invitation rooting the hope. Her yes came quick, eyes crinkling. Outside walls again. We parted at the corner, her hand lingering a beat before release, the warmth staying on my skin as I headed home. Hope settled deep that night, connection rooted solid, ready to grow like first green pushing through winter's crust. You feel it too, that quiet build, when vulnerability turns to strength. Her gaze met mine steady that evening, no more looking away, the park light etching promise in her eyes. Vulnerability bridged us to something real, raw as turned earth, blooming slow but true. Share your hidden tensions below. Subscribe for more stories of quiet truths.